thank you all who are able to attend the session today. This is our Meet Cat session. This is our second session, as I said before. I'm Angela Dawson, and I'm with the Shaw Center for Success, and I coordinate the health and safety education component of Shaw. And this is an area that we felt was really important for us to keep everyone in the community up to speed about, to know who CAT is. What is CAT? So we're gonna make sure that you guys have the opportunity to understand who CAT is, what they're about, why we have them, and any of your questions, we'll have an opportunity for those to be answered. So what I want to do is just start off in about another minute. We'll make sure that the CAT, our coronavirus advisory team, will have the opportunity to introduce themselves individually so that you will know who they are, and then give them the opportunity to provide information to all of us about what they're doing, because we all need to be on the same page about that. And there are a few questions that I have for them that we have already ahead of time that they will answer and address. And then we will give everyone else the remainder of the time the opportunity to ask any questions, voice any concerns, whatever you think is appropriate for CAT. And that will happen maybe in the last 20 or so minutes or so. We want to wrap it up with being able to have an opportunity for people to be heard for the last 20, maybe 25 minutes, I would say, trying to gauge that. But if you can always use the chat, because I'll be moderating the chat as well. And if you could remain muted until or unless you're able to speak. and again, if you want to, you can use the raise the hand feature as well. So let me just check. Okay, we're at 67, 68 people, and we're at 102. So I think I just want to go ahead and turn this over to Kat and Monique. If you could help us to introduce the members of CAT, and also if any of you who can, give us context about who CAT is.
Absolutely. So I'm Monique Davis. I currently serve as the Dean of Health Sciences and Director of Nursing. That is my secondary job right now. It's a huge role that I play here at the college, but my primary focus since around March the 1st or March the 2nd has been being a champion for all things health and safety related to this pandemic here at Montgomery College, and serving with Adam Reid for our Corona Advisory Team. And so when we first got news of what was going on around us, it was important to senior leadership, Dr. Pollard, for us to get a focus group together to look at what we need to do as an institution. First priority is to maintain the health and safety of our community, and then to take a look at what our campus operations and things would look like. So we're excited to be with you again. We've been fortunate to be welcomed to a lot of the governance structures. So I feel like we have had a wonderful opportunity over the course of these, it's been over a year now, for us to share with our community what is happening within the college and the decisions that, or the recommendations that we have offered to senior leadership and how the college has moved forward. So I will introduce Adam Reid. Adam, you can say hello.
Yes, good afternoon, everybody. My name is Adam Reid. I'm the Director of Public Safety, Health, and Emergency Management for the college.
All righty, and I would also like to welcome Marcus Rosano.
Hello, everybody. I'm Marcus Rosano. I'm the talking head at the college, the communications guy, PR dude, whatever you want to call me. It's all good, but I'm glad to have been, well, I guess under different circumstances it would be even better, but to work with Monique and with Adam and everybody that's been a part of the CAT, since day one. It seems like a decade ago, but it was really about a year and a half ago. But it's a pretty awesome team. And it's pretty good to to work alongside of folks that you highly respect as professionals, but in a different vein than just your MC standard work. So that was a pretty cool experience, and it has been. and it continues to be.
Right. And then I see Rowena D'Souza.
Thank you. Thanks, Monique. So I'm Rowena D'Souza, and I'm the Risk Management Coordinator here at the college. My role on CAD is to represent HR STEM along with Krista Walker. And so we basically address issues related to employee health and wellness and safety. We've gone through a lot of iterations of, what happens when there is a exposure or any issue related to the virus, how to bring employees back safely, answer questions, and kind of reassure our employees that health and safety of our students and our employees are of prime importance to Dr. Pollard and to the CAP group. So that is our role, and we meet on a weekly basis to address any issues that arise. So that's what we do, and it's been a great experience.
All right, now I see Kevin Long.
Good afternoon, Kevin Long, Deputy Chief of Staff for Planning and Policy, and I've had the privilege and honor of working with this wonderful team since about last April or so. I think once CAP was expanded, I joined the team. It's just been a great experience, a lot of fun, a lot of challenges, and it continues to be just one of my favorite meetings of the week.
Awesome. Well, that's refreshing to hear because we have a lot of work that we have to do. So to know that we're having fun while we're doing it is always a good moment. And again, it's all about the team that you have to work with that makes the difficult days manageable and bearable. So I'm going to switch over here and say hello to Rose.
Hi, everyone. Associate Senior VP for Advancement and Community Engagement, and along with Marcus and Ray Gilmer, representing our team, Advancement and Community Engagement, keeping our ears open on how we can support with communications about what you all need to hear about coronavirus and the health and safety. Also, being aware of how we need to use our HERF funding, CARES, CARISA funding, as you might have heard it also called, and how that intersects. And I can tell you that the last year has been an incredible professional development journey and getting to know this team. There was an initial group of CAT members, and then they expanded it. So I refer to us as the kittens. And I think Adam and Monique have done an incredible job leading us. And it is every decision that's made is for the health and safety of employees and students.
All right, thanks, Rose. And I will welcome Jane Ellen.
Good afternoon, everyone. I'm Jane Ellen Miller. I am the Interim Chief Information Officer. And I will just say it has been truly a pleasure being a part of CAT and working with leaders who really lead with kindness and compassion. And I think that's been at the focus of everything that we do so that we're keeping people safe. From my perspective, it's really about looking at the technology and how do we need to do things and pivot a little bit in this remote environment. So the fact that we're able to meet on Zoom was a major coup for us so that we could just keep right on going. I think many people are aware that we distribute equipment to faculty and staff. We changed to a curbside pickup, again, to keep people safe, but we've been doing this since the week we left campus, and the only time that we have not distributed equipment was during the winter break. So that happens every single week to make sure that people have the technology in their hands, but we're not forgetting the students. We've had some fabulous donations to provide those students who are in need laptops. We made changes even with software. So Adobe is very huge in the classroom, and we had licenses for in the classroom, but that didn't work remotely. And so we had to change and put Adobe in the hands of every single student so that they could still continue their work. Looking at things like a link that shows them low cost and no cost internet access. And what we've got coming up is we are about to embark on putting wireless in all of the student parking lots and one of the parking garages so that, again, this is at the request of the students, they have more access to wireless and have somewhere to go. And by putting it in all the student parking lots, that will actually boost the wireless in the buildings too. So our work is broad. It really is about us being able to continue to do all the work that we do to support student success, both in a remote and on-campus environment.
All right, thank you, Jane Ellen. And last but not least, I'd like to welcome Marvin Mills. Marv is muted and his camera's off, so I'm not sure if he can join in with us right in this moment, but Marvin Mills is our, oh, there you are, Marv, hello.
Hi, how are you? Hello, everybody. Marv Mills. I'm the Vice President for Facilities, and it's been my pleasure to work with the CAT group. Facilities has basically been trying to make sure that when you come on campus, you're safe. And we're also working very diligently with all the members of CAT and the other particular units out of AFS to make sure that as we return to campus, we're going to all be safe. And that's basically our mission, is to make sure that everybody has a good experience on the environment on the campus. Thank you very much for inviting us today. I appreciate that.
And thanks, Marv. And I just saw that Krista Walker just joined us, and Rowena did a brief intro for you, Krista, but you're welcome to say hello as well.
I apologize for being late. I was I'm in back-to-back Zoom meetings today, so I just keep clicking the enter the meeting button. I'm pleased to be here, and I hope that everyone's doing well. It's a pretty day. It's hard to be inside on Zoom, so it's good to see everybody.
Right. So Angela, do you want me to, let me just share, because there are some other additional Corona Advisory team members who had some scheduling conflicts today, but we do have representation from Student Affairs. We have representation, additional public safety from Adams area. We have some representation from college-wide chairs. We have representation, I think that's everyone that's there. We also had significant student engagement, and we were very pleased in the summer and in the fall, and also during our meetings this spring, that students have been able to join us. We meet every Wednesday, so it is a huge time commitment for them. And we tried to share with them that, you know, it's okay if you can't come, but we'd love to hear your perspective and your insight, because as we're making recommendations, it's helpful for us to know exactly what students need to hear, what they may need as we're making those recommendations. So we've tried to capture as many of our constituents so that we can, you know, do what's in the best interest of our entire community. So Angela, I have the questions. Do you want me just to tackle them, or you want to ask them in the order you want to ask?
You actually can tackle those, Monique, and in the context of just educating people about what CAT actually does and
Absolutely.
those contexts.
Sure. So the first question we received was, what are the present goals for the Corona Advisory team? And so our goal has been the same from the very beginning. We needed to make sure that we had a dedicated set of employees looking at what's happening at the county level, what's happening at the state level, and what's happening at the federal level. Looking at federal guidance, looking at the CDC, looking at what's happening in Montgomery County Health Department, what's happening in the state of Maryland Health Department. There have been an array of meetings that have happened on the county, state, federal level. And just for Adam and I, it just was not enough time in the day for the two of us to even sit in on all of those meetings. So it's helpful to have a team approach to get all of that information. In the midst of this year, we also created a unique affinity group within all of the educational institutions in Montgomery County. So we had MCPS, we had our private parochial schools had representation. We also had us at Montgomery College, and then we had Washington Adventist University and the universities at Shady Grove, because we figured that it would be important for us, all of the educational institutions in the county, to have similar recommendations, or just to hear and learn about those best practices, about what other schools are doing and what we were doing. So So even in the midst of having standardized meetings from the state level, county level, federal level, we also had some new affinity group meetings to address the specific needs of the educational institutions in the county. So that was one of our first priorities, was just to take a look at what's happening, what are the trends, what are the what's happening with coronavirus, what are the numbers, the cases, the hospitalization rates, what are the state of emergency guidelines that we're getting from the state, what are the executive orders that were being put forward through the county council in Montgomery County and through the county executive, and how can we best align ourselves with what those restrictions or those guidances were. So that was another big piece of the work that we do. And that work has continued. So as you all know, we're still under a state of emergency through the state of Maryland. The Montgomery County still has some significant restrictions, and we are interested in continuing to resume as much of our operations, but some of the decisions that need to be made are made for us at the federal or the state or at the county level. Another piece or a priority for us was to look at what are those best practices for our population. We're a non-residential institution. So students are not required to have their tetanus shot, or they're not required to have meningococcal vaccines, and all of those things are not required to have annual physicals. And so our population is significantly different than those of our university partners who have dorms or college housing. So we had to look at what type of recommendations and guidance that was put forth through higher education spaces that would be relevant for our student population. Our students are transient. So how do we make those decisions best for our population? What do we need to do for the community that we are a part of? So for example, our facilities are often used by community agencies. What impact will that have? How do we manage and oversee all of those things? So if we have restrictions within our students and our employees having access, we have to limit that access to our community as well. So part of a huge recommendation that we put forward to senior leadership was centered around the use of our spaces for public health and emergency reasons only. So we had been under that directive for quite a while, where we opened up our facilities to the Red Cross because there was such a need for blood drives. We've been doing our food donation and distribution contactless since this pandemic has been going on. So we've made that a priority to make sure that some of those important emergent community services were still accessible to our community. Another area, Marcus and Rose kind of alluded to this, but a big piece of what we do with the Corona Advisory Team is communication. And Dr. Pollard has been sending out memos and memos and memos, video blogs. There's been so much communication that's gone forward. And we're just appreciative of our communications team. We get requests for print articles, for interviews. And so Marcus and his team helps all of us get prepared for those activities, but also what happens on our website, what happens in the print literature that we give out, what happens with all of the signage and the information that we have to have posted on the actual campuses if people come. So that was a huge undertaking as well, just making sure that all of our communities of interest are aware of what is happening at Montgomery College. So those are still our same goals. We're still plugging away at meeting those needs. And I'm going to tackle question number 8, which is CAT a permanent fixture at MC or not? And we started out as just being an ad hoc group. We honestly thought in March that we would be out for about 2 weeks. And then we would, after spring break, everybody would come back and we would, bounce back and get back to what normal was. And so over a year now, I think it's like 55 or 56 weeks that we're into this, we're realizing that this type of work here at the college is necessary. And for the present time, the Corona Advisory Team is still up and fully functional. Fortunately, Adam is our emergency manager here at the college, and he has some great plans about long-term sustainability for our Corona advisory team. Hopefully, we won't have to continue to deal with coronavirus, as long as, as it's happening. But we do need to make sure that we're not just looking at this from a single lens of a pandemic. We do have to expand the work that we do and the infrastructures that we've put in place with the Corona advisory team, and looking more holistically at emergency management, whether it's related to another type of pandemic, whether it's emergency man-made or natural disasters and things like that. So will the Corona advisory team at its heart and its foundation still serve the college? Yes, but it may be expanded to address a more holistic view of the needs of the college. Is CAT involved in the mass vaccination efforts of the state? We are not involved directly with the mass vaccination efforts that are happening at the state level, because it is just that. It is what is being managed by the Department of Health at the state of Maryland, and they work very closely with the county health departments. We have been fortunate to offer our Germantown campus as a host site, but we are not responsible for manning, serving, providing the vaccinations, being responsible for the storage, the supplies, any of those things. We are literally just a host site. And like I said, as we've tried our very best to meet the needs of our community, we've opened up our facilities for those emergency and health related services, such as the blood drive and the food donations. So we're doing a similar thing with allowing the state and the county to utilize our BE building for the distribution of the vaccine. All right. Is the primary focus of CAT to ensure communication about the response? I think we tackled that one. So yes, we do have some roles to play within communication, but we do offer insight as to what should be communicated. But our communications team do a phenomenal job of taking what information we have and sharing it in all of the social media platforms, in print and in personal interviews. What are CAT's recommendations for the college's reopening? So the first thing I want to do is to kind of dispel a myth that we have to have a college reopening. Montgomery College has been open and fully operational since the pandemic began. We have a significant number of our employees and now students who have resumed on-site activities. So our public safety, IT, facility staff have been taking great care of our campus since we left, since many of us have been working remotely. We tried a very small pilot in the summer session number 2 with our automotive tech to bring some students back, very small numbers, tried to pilot it, see what strengths and weaknesses we would learn and what we would learn from that, so we could expand those offerings to students for fall. In the fall semester, we had a little less than 3% of our classes on site, which were mainly focused in on on-campus labs. We had to work very closely with our facilities team, public safety, IT, with faculty and staff and students to bring them back in a safe manner to campus. There are capacity limits to the number of people who can be in a space based on head count and square footage. And there are specific criteria that people must adhere to when they're on site, with maintaining social distancing, doing their frequent hand hygiene, and also doing their daily symptom assessment. So we want to make sure that you check yourself before you come to campus. And if you're not well, you need to stay at home. So those are some of the things that we put in place to make sure that we're minimizing the risk of exposure. There have been notices of people who've come to campus who have been positive with COVID. And we're fortunate that we've not had an outbreak. I dare to say that out loud, because as soon as you say it, I don't want to jinx it. But It's been some isolated instances across the campuses. And fortunately, we have a robust process that once we're notified that someone has been to campus, facilities, public safety, they have their protocols that they need to adhere to. Rowena works very closely from HR with the employee piece of it. Student Affairs is actively involved in this process to make sure students are aware and they know what needs to happen next. We work very closely with Montgomery County Department of Health to make sure that we're adhering to what the best practices are. So about resuming and returning to on-site, it is a slow, gradual process. It is because we have so many limitations on our physical spaces. And if you have, Montgomery County has a 50 gathering size outdoor and a 25 gathering size indoor, that still needs to be taken into account with the square footage, the ventilation, all of the pieces that go along with that space. How many bathrooms are accessible, and how's the entry and the exit pathways into these spaces. So it's not just looking at the exact number of people that are in the building, because we may have someone in the classroom, but if we have 4 classrooms running at one time, that does increase the potential for traffic in the hallways and the bathrooms and things like that. So we have to take those things into account when we're approving for people to come back on campus. So I want to dispel that myth. Montgomery College has been up and running, doing well. And again, slow and steady is the race. We've been taking our time, and we've been intentional about taking our time and being gradual with allowing people to come back onto campus. Because again, the goal here is to keep everyone safe and to minimize those risks. All right. Does CAT advise only Dr. Pollard, or do they provide advice and recommendations to all of senior leadership? How does that work? So yes, we have a coronavirus leadership group that includes all of senior leadership. We meet once a week. And so the Corona Advisory team meets once a week. We provide updates, recommendations, insights. We have dialogue about whatever the hot topics are for us to discuss that week. And then we do report out and offer recommendations to senior leadership in those Monday meetings. Dr. Pollard also has her SALT team meetings, senior administrative leadership team meeting, SALT. And Adam and I have been invited to several of those meetings to provide some more in-depth information beyond what we've been providing to the CV leadership meeting, especially if Adam and I have been called to an external meeting and there's some additional information that we need to share with senior leadership before we have those CV leadership meetings. So we have an awesome way to communicate with senior leadership. I'm just thankful that we have senior leadership at the college who are so supportive of hearing what the best practices are and making decisions and accepting our recommendations based upon those health and safety metrics, versus looking at, I mean, we all do need to look at our bottom line. We need to look at our finances. We need to look at what it is that we do, how we serve our communities. But the focus has truly been on what is in the best interest of health and safety of employees and students. And so that has been the driving factor for what we're doing and what we provide to senior leadership. Is there a central location for information for the information CAT needs to share with the MC community? Yes. So our communications team set up awesome websites for us. And it's actually, if you just go to the Montgomery College homepage, and I'm gonna pull it up so I can give you the exact way it's written here. And if you just, you'll see in the blue banner at the top, COVID-19 info. If you click on that, that will take you to our Corona Advisory team and all of the places where we're storing information that we've been providing since last March. I answered those questions. Okay, so we had some additional questions about what is the criteria being used for staff, when staff will return to campus, what's the criteria for classes and bringing students back. And Again, we're looking at, are those classes required for graduation? Are students so close and they need to have that hands-on lab? What are the priorities? What are the educational benefits of them returning on site? Can the facility spaces that we have accommodate that group coming in? Do we have to have a smaller group? Do we have to cohort them, rotate them through? We also have to look at what resources and how this may impact students, because students, as you know, may have children that they're caring for and they're learning at home as well. So how do we best meet our student needs if they're not able to come to campus? So all of those things come into play when we're trying to determine for classes to return on site. As far as staff returning on site, again, it's looking at the priorities of the unit. We have IT, we have public safety, we have facilities, we have some people who are in the administrative and fiscal service areas who, they come in maybe once every couple of weeks to handle payroll and things like that on an isolated basis. So, it just really depends on the nature of the work as to who has authorization to be on site. Will MC have any stance on vaccine requirement in order to return to in-person operations? Yes, so our stance has been shared pretty publicly since the vaccines have become available. We highly recommend that when you are eligible to get the vaccine, that you do so after consulting with your healthcare professional. We know that some people may not be eligible for the vaccine because of health challenges. We know some people may have religious or cultural or want an exemption or want not to get the vaccine. So we're not in a place right now because it is still under emergency authorization for use to require employees and students to be vaccinated. But we do highly recommend that if you're eligible and you've worked with your healthcare professional and they recommend that you get it, that you do. And so that's the stance that we have. And, fortunately, we've, been trying our best to communicate that out through Dr. Pollard's memos. So, and I do want to give a little shout out here for HR STEM and their newsletter because some of that language has been in the newsletter as well. I think, Angela, I've tackled just about all of those questions. So I don't know if you want to open the floor now or if any of my CAT members wanted to chime in on any of those pieces. If they have something on their heart they'd like to share, we'll go ahead and allow that.
Yeah, I think if anybody has anything to add that could be helpful before we open the floor to questions.
I just would like to reiterate one piece about the mass vaccination site. So obviously we've been working very closely with the county and we are we're the host location. But, and this is something that can help, as folks talk, about questions coming in. So we have received quite a few questions, not just from MC folks, but from community members as well that think that MC has a piece in facilitating this. So as you have conversations, with friends, family, anybody in your circles, just to redirect them again, that the county and the state are the ones that are facilitating this and not the college. We're just a host for it. So it's helpful with time because if folks are frantically trying to figure out, what the next step in their process is, or if they have an appointment the next day, we wouldn't want them to be delayed in getting the answers that they need, but we are not the place to provide those. Obviously, that's all facilitated through state and county health.
Mm-hmm. Okay, and I wanted to just draw everyone's attention. Adam included the link in the chat to CAT's guidelines for the return to campus as well. So I would like to open up if anyone has questions or concerns that you want to raise for CAT to address. I'm sure a lot of people do. I have 80 people here, so I'm sure you do. Okay, anybody's hands raised. You can, okay. Okay, hold on. Someone Yeah, Benita, can you ask the question? You're muted.
I do that at least once a day, pardon me. A question came through, the person doesn't want to disclose, but they sent it to me directly to ask. So here's the question. It's been a lot of talk in the student affairs area that we are reporting back to work, but it hasn't been officially announced by the college. Please provide update.
So I know that each of our units are beginning to have conversations about what the gradual return to on-site work will look like. In each of our areas, there have been employees who have approval to come on site, either a set day, a set time, a time frame, and to come in to do a specific duty that they cannot do remotely. And that is with the exception of public safety, IT, and facilities. So in terms of a specific guidance as to what decision student affairs has made, there is no public decision that can be shared at this time, because each of our units are not just looking at what is the work that must be done on site versus what work can be done remotely, but also where will the employees work when they return? What will their facility area look like? How many of those employees can be in the spaces at the same time? What services will they be offering to students, and what will those look like? So I know that those are conversations that are being had. And I'm not sure if Rowena or Krista would like to chime in a little bit, but from my understanding, we're still exploring what the priorities are for people to work on site versus remote.
So thank you, Monique. A big part of this is something that I've kind of been a little bit of a broken record about, and that is I think that there's the sense that it's going to be a full scale, we're just going to tell employees when they're coming back. And what we need to define, as Monique has shared, is what is absolutely essential on site. So what is the service model that needs to be delivered on site versus what can be continued to be done remotely? We've learned some things in this situation. We found that there are some things actually that work almost better when we do it virtually. I know in HR, we have found that having Zoom office hours and running our HR front desk as a virtual help desk has been very effective. And so we're going to be continuing that practice going forward. I think some of the things that we're hearing is based on the fact that the leaders of the area are starting to ask questions and engage in conversations with their teams about what things might look like, but there are no firm definitive decisions have been made at this point. It's all exploration and having conversations and doing the planning work. What I can say is that for the administrative and fiscal services team, which we see ourselves kind of as the backbone of supporting the operations of the college, Donna Shenna, our senior vice president, has asked each of the vice presidents to prepare and submit to her what our preliminary plans are for this summer and what it might look like in the fall. And speaking just for my own team, I know that we'll be doing what I call upscaling our on-site presence a little bit in preparation to support the fall work that needs to happen. So I hope that clarifies. We don't have definitive answers, but what you're hearing is a lot of planning and conversations occurring. And the message that has been consistent in every conversation I've been in is the #1 priority is health and safety.
So someone has a question, I think, that is along this vein. Well, I feel like your answer pretty much covered this. This person wants to know, when can faculty and staff members have more consistent use of their offices? And I feel like
that's kind of part of this discussion that's happening
right.
with the return to campus and what the service models needs are.
Right. So there are no definitive answers, as she said. with that. So it's just exploring what that could look like, as you said, but just trying to have preparation.
I think
for-
there's a lot of work being done behind the scenes and a lot of conversations and planning. I don't think it's, I can tell you for HR,
Mhm.
even though I'm planning to submit something to Donna on Friday, there's still, it's, you know, what I'd like to see happen, but then I also need to confer with Marv's team and facilities, what is feasible for us. So this is very complex. And then Jane Ellen's team in terms of, do we have the appropriate technology? Are there any special needs that we're gonna have? And so think about that for all of the areas of the college makes it much more complicated.
Right. So to me, it sounds like it's just a lot of factors that have to be thought through carefully, even though you're having the exploration. We're nowhere close to telling people when they can actually have consistent use of their physical space on campus, obviously.
I think some areas may be ready sooner than others.
Right.
Because some of those areas are going to support the return to work
Right.
on campus in the fall. So those areas I think are going to be moving a little bit faster.
Okay. So someone asked the question, is there a survey being developed to determine if some staff positions could be continued remotely?
That is a very good question. So there are so many uncertainties right now in terms of our operations and what we're going to look like going forward, that the college is not going to be approving anyone for a permanent remote status at this time. We need to get a firm sense of where we're going to be in the fall and going forward, and then those conversations and those decisions will be made. What we do know is, and we anticipate that right now we're in what we're calling emergency mandatory remote status. It's the college saying you must work from home. We can't, because of the public health crisis, we can't have a bunch of people on the campus. But as we start to bring people back, it is our expectation that many of our employees will continue to work from home in a telecommute status. We have some employees that do it on a regular basis under normal conditions once a week. We anticipate that it will be a greater number for the time being.
So along that vein that you just indicated, another question was, I guess on an individual basis, could a staff member request a permanent remote working?
No, we will not approve anything at this time.
Okay.
We will communicate. You should know that we know that is the future of work. We've been looking at that, and that's why the college established this. We're a little bit ahead of the curve with the pandemic, knowing that we were going to move some positions that may move in this direction. There's so many uncertainties right now with our operations that we're not prepared to make approvals piecemeal. It needs to be a strategic process.
Okay. There's another question. It's about physical safety. Someone's asked, they have a concern about people needing to work on site to meet with students in person. And the concern is that they may be the only person in that building and it may not be safe.
So I'll be happy to tackle that one, Angela, and a great question too. So one thing I'll say is we meticulously, as we look at the buildings and the occupancy and in conjunction with Marv's team, Krista's team, everybody, right? So it's not just a linear decision that's made here. The odds of having one person occupying a building is probably going to be very slim. So I mean, it's more than likely there'll be a few folks that are in there, but we also know where everybody is when they are there, right? And this will continue as we gradually phase back. Right now we're running an average of 1 to 2, some campuses 3 buildings where we have activities going on. We have a list, we know who's there, who's coming in. And as things increase, obviously the ability to scale down to the T, it might be a little bit more of a challenge, but we still know public safety is still well aware, and public safety actively patrols and facilitates the moderation of those spaces. So especially as we continue to gradually increase our presence with a limited number of buildings, there will be a public safety presence, as there always has been. Even since the buildings have been empty and unoccupied, public safety is still constantly going through there and is still available and readily accessible on the campuses. So looking at that as certainly a factor as we move forward to make sure that no one is put into either a environmentally unsafe area, but also a physically unsafe area, right? We wouldn't want to create that barrier or have that challenge there. So again, we are well aware, well succinct to what's happening, where it's happening, appointments, and making sure that those areas that are occupied do have a heavy presence, if not a static presence, depending on what the situation is in that location. So I hope that helps answer that.
Yeah. And this next question is a facilities question, it looks like. And the question is, are there plans to address the poor ventilation in offices and classrooms, and specifically those without windows?
Hey, Angela, I could answer that, but I'm not sure if Marv is listening. But I can give you a little update. I've been working with James Gillis, and everybody knows James, facilities guru. And as we speak, there are a series of HVAC. They're called Suitability Studies. I'm learning all about this stuff because I have to. So right now there's suitability studies that are going on at all three campuses. They're picking out the older buildings first. And what that does, it essentially makes recommendations for either like upgrades or improvements to the overall safety of the building. So this is going on now. We'll have a memo coming out maybe in a week or two that kind of gets a little bit more into the weeds of it. But it's a really good question. It's not something that is unique to Montgomery College, because the more I looked at it, the more I see that everybody is doing these because of what COVID brings, and in terms of ventilation and HVAC and windows. Windows is a huge deal from what I've gathered. So it's a big deal. It's not just us, but and I keep joking around with James and a couple of us on communications. I looked at Boston University's study, the same kind of deal. Different world. They have 198 buildings that are going to need upgrades and improvements. So if you think about that in a big scale, it's old buildings that is, dead set in the middle of the old city. We don't necessarily have that, so we're in pretty good shape. But yeah, we will be communicating, within the next week or two about exactly what these suitability studies, are undertaking. And it's, I think it's three. I believe James told me it's like 3 contractors, separate contractors that are working in the buildings, just to basically give us the information on what we need to do, if we're good to go on a certain building, if we're not, and we'll get those recommendations. And all of that work is actually going to be done in 2021 and 2022. So we're not waiting around. The stuff is going to happen fast and furious.
So it sounds like, Marcus, you're almost answering this next question that's related, that someone asked about if there will be any changes to the classroom infrastructure before classes return to the on-campus mode. But it sounds like if there's anything that's going to be done, it's going to be done rather quickly based on the suitability study. So yep. I don't know if it could be as specific as this person is asking about.
This is Marv. Let me address that. One of the things that we've looked at is the CDC requirements for space, plus the American Society for Heating, Ventilation, and Air Conditioning Engineers for the ventilation and also the filtration. Combining those two requirements, we've established the occupancy for each classroom that can be occupied. And we're working now very closely with a group that's actually doing what we call a tabletop exercise to look at every facility that we can actually occupy and every classroom that we can actually occupy, determine the actual number of faculty and students that can be in that particular classroom. So that particular study is ongoing. We will have as Marcus mentioned, we'll have a survey of 6 of our most critical buildings, hopefully this week, and be able to pass that on to Dr. Pollard and her SALT team. We're also looking at 10 other buildings that we will actually do some more studies on. And the idea is that we're going to use our deferred maintenance dollars that were authorized, which is about $1.2 million. And we'll also be asking for some federal grant money to do this. These will be one-time upgrades to our facilities. And You gotta remember now, some of these buildings were built back in the 1950s, 60s, and 70s, and they were up to code when they were built. But now with the COVID, there's a significant increase in the requirements now. And so those buildings have to be educated for if they can be upgraded or very easily, or what's the difficulty in upgrading them and what would it cost. So cost is a factor. I will have to tell you, cost is definitely a factor, but we're going to do all we can to make sure we can open up as many buildings as we can.
So the next question is about the wireless access in parking lots. And the question is, when will that be available to the students?
So that's it. That's currently under development. The design is just about done, which means next it'll be going to procurement. I think the hardest part was doing the initial design, but then securing the funds. So the funds to make this happen have been already allocated. And that's a beautiful thing. Initially, we had the plan without any potential funding source, but certainly the grant funds that are coming through HERF and others have helped with this. The other part of that was ensuring that we had the funds to sustain this going forward, because the grant funds are great, but you have to be able to upgrade these, right? This equipment gets old, it has to be updated, et cetera. So knowing that we've got the funding to continue this in the out years was something that also went into the planning. So while I don't have a date for you today at this meeting, I can assure you in about a week or so, I can give you a date of when they will be ready.
Someone has another facilities related question, and it's, will the results of the HVAC testing be available to the college community?
Yes, we will make that available once it's approved by the SALT team.
And okay, someone has a question about, I'll see what this is. The new corona variants are much more virulent with young people. Could you discuss plans on addressing that, as well as plans on the return of the general public to special events and sports and so on?
All right, I will tackle that one. And so the method of transmission is the same. So the protocols that we have in place with maintaining your social distancing, your frequent hand washing, wearing your face covers, all of those things will continue. Again, we want to encourage people to, you know, if you're eligible to get vaccinated, please do so after you've talked with your healthcare professional. Many of our states and jurisdictions now allow 16 and over to become vaccinated. So that should help us as well with the younger population. But in terms of other protocols that we would need to put in place, there are no other ones at this time. And then in terms of the general public, special events, sports and things, we're still held to the gathering size limitations, 50 outdoors, 25 inside. But again, when we're considering things that are inside, we have to think about the square footage of those spaces. So, and the priority for our public use of our spaces have been centered around those that are health related and meet the needs of the community. So we are exploring other use of our spaces, but we do need some significant justification. We do need to know exactly what is the population that they're requesting to come and use our spaces. And again, our priority has been for our students and our employees, and we want to get as much of our college activities back on site as we can. So we have to think about that when we're inviting others in our community to use our spaces. So it is a process.
So someone has a question about the Wi-Fi in the parking lot. If a student doesn't own a car, will they be able to use Wi-Fi in the parking lot? And how will MC make sure that it's safe?
So that is a very good question, and I'm not sure I'm the one who can answer that. But you may remember earlier I said that the Wi-Fi, because of boosters that are placed on the roofs, et cetera, will extend beyond the parking lots and perhaps into the buildings. So not going into the buildings, but on some of the grounds, there is seating and picnic benches. And we noticed that last summer, while the campuses weren't open, that there were students who were sitting outside taking advantage of the wireless that was actually bleeding from the buildings. So sitting outside, we would not at all recommend somebody sit in a parking lot and they're not in a car, but certainly on the grass in those areas, they will be able to access the wireless.
Okay. And the safety aspect is probably.
Yep, I'll just jump on that. That's easy enough. And exactly what Jane Ellen said, we did have a lot of students who used, the picnic areas, the benches and those spots, and absolutely are more than welcome to. So, and again, our officers, they're 365, 24/7. So, they're on patrol, they're out and about. So they certainly are keeping a watchful eye on everybody and making sure that the conditions are as safe as possible. And as we look forward to, after the Wi-Fi is up and established, I'm sure we'll certainly have an idea of areas that are maybe more popular, and that may be a discussion of working with facilities to, add in some additional seating, right, or some tables or something somewhere along, the backside of a parking lot or a grassy area. Obviously, just because it's going into the parking lots doesn't mean we're going to repurpose the parking lots necessarily. But as we roll this out and take a look at it, we can certainly see what's best to accommodate. And public safety's job is exactly that, to keep our students and our visitors and employees and everybody safe. So if we know of especially a particular area that's being frequented to use the Wi-Fi, we're going to make sure that we're there and able to provide good solid security for everybody who's coming in.
Someone has a question.
This is Jane. Oh, excuse me.
Okay.
I too have to jump off, but I do want to say, so I reached out, and my director within infrastructure is giving me a date that I think is very aggressive. So I'm going to push it out a little bit and say that by the second 7-week fall semester, that the wireless will be available. Very well may be available before then, which is what he's saying, but I'm the belts and suspenders person. I always like to think about there's things that can get in the way, but definitely by the second 7-week of this coming fall semester.
I know that Monique has to leave us right at 2. So this is a question she may be able to address. Someone asked. I don't know if there have been any talks about the plan to keep staff that conduct outreach in the community and high school safe. Although we may have safety measures in place, other organizations may not. And I don't know if they're talking about the college taking some part in helping those individuals to be safe.
So I think the first thing is if you're working in an area and you have approval to be on site for work, you've been approved to come to the campus for work, and you're going to another site to do your work, we need to have a conversation about that with HR to identify where you're going, what you're doing while you're there. We have had some of our employees in workforce development go to the county jail to provide some services there, but we had to have some clear protocols when they went to offsite to do those activities. So there is a huge discussion piece that should happen with making sure that there are plans in place when you're going offsite to provide those services. And those should be part of the conversations that are happening within your unit about coming back on site or going to an offsite location.
And I'll just add on to that, if you don't mind, Monique. I think it's something that's worthy of consideration, especially for anybody that's having those conversations in that space. One thing that we request from anybody that's a vendor or not affiliated with MC that's coming on, even as simple as just to do construction work, is that they submit a COVID safety plan to us. So we review that COVID safety plan to make sure that they are in compliance with the minimum of what our standards are, right? And if they're not, they have to make adjustments. So the same could be said for folks that are going out, that may want to do outreach or have to work in a certain areas to request, okay, so what is your institution, what is your location providing in terms of safety plan for your COVID response? and reviewing that in turn to deem whether or not this is indeed a safe environment that we want to put our folks in. So it is part of that discussion as well.
I know that Monique answered someone's question also about mandatory face coverings. We know that's mandatory, and I'm not sure how we enforce that. I know some people have had questions in the past about that, how that is enforced. That was a concern that some people had, but it is definitely mandatory. Jane, did you have something else to add to that? Okay. Okay.
So again, it's part of being personally accountable. You keep your face cover on to keep yourself safe, and you keep your face cover on to keep those around you safe. So that is an expectation when people come on site, that they will maintain their distancing, as well as putting on their face covers and performing their hand hygiene. So, and we should be comfortable without being non-confrontational, because we really want to be in a safe space for all of us. We have to go through a lot of justifications and permissions to get people on site. We want to keep people safe. So we're hopeful that, it doesn't have to be a punitive thing, or we have to call public safety because we're asking someone to do something that's in the best interest of us all. So please, ma'am, please, sir, wash your hands. If you're sick, stay home, stay 6 feet distance, and wear your face covers. You will be a hero because you will save a life.
Okay, that's awesome. So we are now at the end of our program, and I do want to say that if people continue to have questions and concerns, then again, you can forward those to Kat. Adam had placed the link to Kat's website in the chat, and of course we can share that with you at any point in time if you have problems trying to find that. But I want to just thank everybody for coming and participating, and this has been so informative. And Kat, we appreciate you guys for the work you do and for making yourselves available, because this is such a time where people just, I think, are confused sometimes. They hear things that they're just not certain about, and being remote, maybe that doesn't help for them, for a lot of people, but I really appreciate that.